The pyramids are about 4,500 years old. For most of human history, that was the starting line, the oldest complex civilization we knew, the beginning of organized human society. Then, in 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt drove to a hill in southern Turkey and moved that line back by 7,000 years. What he found wasn't a simple camp. It wasn't a cave. It was a complex of massive carved stone pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons, covered with precise engravings of animals built by people who had no metal tools, no wheels, and no writing system. People we thought couldn't build anything. And here's the part that should actually stop you. After they built it, over what appears to have been more than 1,000 years, they buried it. Every pillar, every carving, under tons of soil, deliberately. And then, whoever these people were, vanished from the archaeological record. No name, no language, no graves we can identify, no explanation. Just the stone, the silence, and an entire chapter of human history nobody knew was missing. The site is called Göbekli Tepe. In Turkish, that means something roughly like Potbelly Hill. It sits about 15 kilometers northeast of a city called Şanlıurfa in southeastern Turkey. From the road, it's completely unremarkable, a flat mound on a hilltop. You drive past it and see nothing worth stopping for. Below that mound, rings of T-shaped limestone pillars. Some of the individual stones stand nearly 6 meters tall. The largest weighs somewhere around 20 tons. They were quarried from nearby bedrock and then moved into position by people with no metal, no wheels, and no draft animals, by hand or with ropes, or with methods we haven't figured out yet. These were the people we called hunter-gatherers, the people who, according to every model we had, should not have been capable of organized large-scale construction, not for another 5,000 years, not after agriculture, not after cities, not after all of the social infrastructure we assumed was necessary before something like this could exist. The question that runs underneath everything you're about to hear is this: if these people could build this, what else did we get wrong? Göbekli Tepe was visited before Schmidt. In 1963, a team from the University of Chicago and Istanbul University passed through on an archaeological survey. An anthropologist named Peter Benedict logged the site. He saw what appeared to be carved flint fragments on the surface. He concluded the mound was probably a medieval Islamic cemetery. Nothing significant. Moved on. The site sat in official records as unimportant for the next 31 years. Schmidt arrived in 1994 and saw something completely different. He noticed the way the limestone was distributed across the surface, the shape of the mound itself, not erosion, not natural hillside. He said later that he knew within minutes he was looking at a prehistoric site. He wrote, "Either this is nothing, or it's the whole world." 2 years later, excavation began. And when they started pulling back the soil, they didn't find one temple, they found layers of them. Enclosures built on top of enclosures, separated by centuries, evidence of continuous use that stretched across more than 1,000 years. Some estimates suggest closer to 1,500. But here's the detail that doesn't get discussed enough. The oldest layers, the deepest ones, the first ones built, contain the largest pillars, the most precise carvings, the most sophisticated construction. As you move up through the layers toward the surface, toward the present, the quality declines. The stones get smaller. The carvings get cruder. The first builders were the best builders. Whatever knowledge made Göbekli Tepe possible was at its peak when the work began, and it diminished from there. That's not how things are supposed to work. Here is what is not at Göbekli Tepe. No kitchens, no cooking hearths, no storage pits, no houses, no evidence of permanent habitation of any kind. At a site that required what may have been tens of thousands of hours of organized labor, there is no sign that anyone who worked here ever stayed. They came, they carved, they built, they left, they came back. And they did this across generation after generation for people who would never see the structure completed. So the question stops being who they were. The question becomes something stranger. What were they coming back for? The animals carved into the pillars are not random. Across the different enclosures, the same species appear again and again: vultures, foxes, snakes, scorpions, wild boar, cranes. Not the animals most commonly hunted for food in this region, mostly the dangerous ones.
predators, venomous creatures, scavengers of the dead, animals at the edges of human experience rather than the center of it. One particular pillar, labeled by researchers as Pillar 43, also called the Vulture Stone, stopped scientists cold when it was properly analyzed. It shows a vulture with a spherical object balanced on its wing. Below that, a headless human figure and a dense arrangement of symbols across the rest of the stone that a team from the University of Edinburgh examined in a 2017 study. Their conclusion, contested but not dismissed, was that the arrangement may represent a specific event in the sky, a comet impact. Specifically, an episode around 10,900 BCE, when some researchers believe a fragmented comet struck Earth's atmosphere and triggered a rapid climate collapse that lasted over 1,000 years. I want to be precise, this interpretation is disputed. Not every archaeologist accepts it, but here's what isn't disputed. Someone 12,000 years ago carved a detailed narrative scene into stone and preserved enough information for modern astronomers to construct a testable hypothesis from it. Someone was watching the sky. Someone was trying to record something they didn't want lost. Around 8,000 BCE, the building stopped, and then someone buried everything. Schmidt was clear on this from early in the excavation. The fill material was not erosion, not collapse, not the slow accumulation of centuries of neglect. It was deliberate. Soil, animal bones, flint chips, stone tools, material brought from somewhere and packed methodically around and over the pillars. Not abandonment, a choice. Someone looked at a structure their people had been building for over 1,000 years, the most sophisticated any human group had ever made at that point in history, and decided to fill it in. No one knows why. We don't know if the people who buried it were the same people who built it. We don't know if the burial was a ritual, a practical decision, an act of grief, or something we don't have a category for. We know only this: they buried it so carefully, so thoroughly, that it survived intact for 10,000 years, which means the burial is the reason we know about it at all. At the start, the question was, if these people could build this, what else did we get wrong? Here's the version of that question that doesn't have a comfortable answer. The section of Göbekli Tepe that's been excavated so far is estimated to represent somewhere around 5% of the total structure. The other 95% is still in the ground. We haven't found another Göbekli Tepe anywhere else on Earth. But before 1994, we weren't really looking for one. We didn't think it was possible. The existence of Göbekli Tepe wasn't a prediction anyone made. It was an accident that survived because someone buried it carefully enough. How many sites like this existed across the ancient world that weren't buried? How many were torn apart for building material, eroded, built over by every civilization that came after? We have no way to count what's gone. We're only finding what someone thought to hide.
Here is the idea that, if it holds, dismantles the foundation of how human civilization has been taught. The standard model goes like this. Humans developed agriculture, created food surplus, settled in one place, grew in population, developed social complexity, and eventually built the organizational capacity to construct large structures. The temple comes after all of that. It's the product of civilization. Food first, then everything else follows. Göbekli Tepe was built before any of that. The botanical evidence, the animal bone record, it all points to hunter-gatherers. No farmed crops, no domesticated livestock. People who, in the standard model, should have been too consumed with daily survival to organize a multi-generational building project that gave them no food, no shelter, and no obvious practical return. Schmidt's argument, one that has gained significant traction since his death in 2014, as other researchers have worked through the evidence, is that the sequence runs the other way. Not agriculture first, then temples, but the temple first, then agriculture. The logic goes like this. To sustain a site that people were traveling from potentially hundreds of kilometers to reach, someone had to feed them. That problem, how to sustainably feed large groups gathering at a fixed location, may have been one of the primary pressures that drove the development of agriculture in this region. Not because humans had surplus food and decided to build something, but because they were already committed to building something and needed food badly enough to figure out farming to keep doing it. The first farmers weren't solving a food problem. They were solving a devotion problem, which means organized human civilization may not have emerged from rational problem solving at all. It may have emerged from something that doesn't fit neatly into our models, a collective pull toward a shared place, a commitment to something that gave no immediate return, a drive to build something larger than any individual would ever see completed. The first step towards civilization wasn't someone figuring out how to grow wheat. It was someone deciding that a hill in southern Turkey was worth walking hundreds of kilometers to work on. And the people who understood that most completely, who built the oldest known monument on Earth from that understanding alone, sealed it under the ground and vanished before we ever knew they existed.
You can visit Göbekli Tepe today. It became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2018. There's a protective shelter over part of the excavation now, a viewing platform where you can look down at the pillars. The fox is still there, carved into stone, mid-stride, every detail of its body still clear. The vulture with the sphere on its wing, the headless figure, 12,000 years later, still sharp. And beneath the platform, in the sections not yet touched, 95% of everything these people built still sealed in the earth, exactly where someone left it. The people who built Göbekli Tepe buried everything they made, deliberately, carefully, well enough that it outlasted every civilization that came after them. Whatever they were thinking when they filled in those final stones, they weren't thinking about us, but they made sure we'd find it anyway.